Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. I'm your pal Wes. You read the title, you saw the thumbnail. It's a joyous day. Syntakt got an update 1.3. It's actually kind of 1.7 from the rhythm, but we're gonna take it, we're gonna be happy about it, and I'm gonna tell you all about it, and then I'll tell you some of my thoughts at the end, so let's get into it. Disclaimer right off the bat, I'm working with beta firmware. It was given to me by the firmware ferrets. There's still a handful of bugs and quirks and things that don't seem to be totally ironed out, and we'll talk about those briefly. If anything changes between now and the official release, then that's probably why. So right off the bat, we got 4 new analog machines, and they're immediately my new favorite machines for all their respective instruments. We got bass drum and snare drum acoustic, and then we got side chip and hi-hat lab. Bass drum and snare drum acoustic, they kind of fill this void that I was really feeling, especially in the snare drum category. Like the snare drum acoustic can just, it's really punchy, it's absolutely huge, and you can get a lot out of it. And it does kind of have these sort of acoustic tendencies to it. I feel like you can really hear it in the bass drum, sort of at its like most plain when you turn up the impulse. It starts to really sound like a beater, and I really, really like that. On the side chip side of things, what is that? It's an arpeggiator and a bunch of amazing little waveforms. So these offsets along the bottom will give you sort of this like, you know, SID station all the way up into those like, kind of begs the question of why we can't have a real arpeggiator for all of the machines, but we're gonna keep moving here. We'll talk about that later. Something that's really cool about the side chip machine is all of the super great waveforms that it has. So, namely, baby, we got pulse width. Nick Bat, pack it up. It's game over, you guys. We can all start making music now. We got a pulse width wave in the Syntakt. But more interesting, actually, I think, is these animated waves. And the pitched noise, I really like a lot. That's gonna be a really fun one for sound design. But these animated waves, which are like rig mod variants, they sound really nice. And I'm a big fan of the sort of timbres that they have. Moving right on along to hi-hat lab. So this is kind of, if you've ever had like the 808 sauna module from Dopefer, I know that's like a weird niche thing, but it's 6 oscillators that kind of have play with each other that you can tune their individual bits. And this is really fun. This is really, really good metallic sounding timbres. I absolutely love it. You get a little bit of this in there. You go over to delay zone and you say, hey, delay, give me some car plussy, that mess going on. And you get some really fun sounds. I am a big fan of that. All of these machines were featured in the 1.7 rhythm update, so there's everything that applies to those machines in that device applies to these machines in this device. They're essentially the exact same. I found this video really helpful for understanding the side chip, and I found this video really helpful for understanding the Euclidean sequencer, which is the new thing that they've also added here and the next thing on the list. Oh wait, don't let me forget to tell you though that bass drum sharp now has a square wave. That's like, that was important. I don't know. Personally, I think that like bass drum sharp, I think it's, yeah, sharp, hard, and classic, all kind of sound the same. You get a lot of the same timbres out of them. Moving back to the Euclidean sequencer. So this is exactly the same as it is in the Digitakt 2 and in the Rhythm now. So you've got the two operators, length, rotations for both operators, and then you get the logic, because it is they're Boolean operators. They be Boolean out here. To be 100% honest, the Euclidean sequencer was a little bit frustrating for me. I was kind of not, it wasn't integrating well into the way that I like to program drums, and you can't actually modulate it with the LFO or anything like that. And I was finding some of the aspects of like getting parameter locks to work on it. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And once I started to get into the like elektron brain space of how I could use this tool, I started to have a lot more fun with it, and I think use it in a lot more meaningful ways. So right off the bat, I think that you should definitely be in grid recording mode when you're using the Euclidean sequencer. That way you can start to see, if we turn it on, how it populates your grid. Yellow is the operator 1, and yellow is also the operator 2, but you'll see kind of how they interplay and interact with each other. Rotation also allows you to visualize this, which I think is really important. Once you put these down, you actually can parameter lock them. You could put like delay and that, and you could maybe do like a big old filter snap or something like that. And then you'll notice they're flash, right? So that means the parameter locks are on there. And then you can actually, if you rotate those parameter locks, you'll see that they actually do move with the sequence rotation, which I think is really nifty and definitely kind of like a fun utility, especially if you're making like a funky bass line and you kind of want it to shift around. I think that that would be a really easy way to be like boop, beep, boop, boop, boop. Something else that I thought was pretty cool, let's just get this going here, right? It actually sounds kind of funny, is that if you go to, you start to, populate this stuff. The Euclidean parameters will absolutely play with the track all functionality. So you can start to like deconstruct a beat and then reconstruct it. But this can also be dangerous, I noticed, because you can also turn Euclidean on or off for everything, which is very, very cool. And I know you're like, hey, Wes, that doesn't sound cool. That doesn't seem cool. It sounds like shit. But stick with me here. Let's think about this in an elektron sort of style. What could we do with controlling all the tracks that could be like meaningful and fun? Well, I'll tell you what we could do. Go and let's mute all but 3 of these tracks here, right? And then let's go to the Euclidean mode, and let's say we want this to be, let's say we want it to be a swarm wave, and then let's copy that sound and let's put it there and there. So now we've got swarm wave on all 3 of these first 3 tracks, right? And then let's go to the other side of trig, and let's move this down to C4. Let's move this down to, let's do this at E4, and let's do this at A4. So let's see how that sounds, right? That sounds actually pretty dreamy. Now let's turn the Euclidean sequencer on for all tracks and get a little like pattern in there, something like that. Let's say, let's maybe go that, and then let's continue to hold track down. All right, that's kind of cool. And then maybe even let's go to this track and let's set the offset to 1 or 2. Let's come over here and do it. Let's turn this. So now we've just made a really sick and very cool polyphonic pattern. The notes are locked to those notes that we, have put in there. But as you can see, this is a utility that we can use to generate cool new ideas. And I think that is super sick. And I think my dog is making weird, sick sounds right now. So hold on a sec. He's fine, he just does that sometimes. I will say that this is a perfect example of one of the times that control all functionality from the Digitech 2 would be absolutely clutch, because then you could really start to maybe have like a handful of tracks that you're gonna control with the Euclidean filter and maybe a handful that you're not. Right now, it's very cool, and I think that it's usable, but you kind of have to work to make it very usable other than just generating random patterns, which is cool and fun, but whatever. I do think that, just doing this random Euclidean stuff could be very fun, especially in the moment performatively, but if I'm being 100% honest, Euclidean sequencer, a little underwhelming. I would have rather had a more melodic-based utility, like an arpeggiator, but you win some, you lose some. Speaking of utilities, the rest of the additions in the OS 1.3 update are really interesting workflow utilities, I guess you could say. So let's just go over a couple of them here, right? All of these utilities focus on bringing you more resources in grid recording mode. And I love that because that's usually where I be living. So the first thing is that now when you hold down a trig that has parameter locks, the page that has those parameter locks lights up. So you see, if we go to this one, we can see that these 3 pages have parameter locks. If we go to this one, we can see there's no parameter locks. It's also not blinking, so we know that. Furthermore, you can now save a sound directly from a trig. So if you're like, oh yeah, that's a good sound, I freaking love that sound, you can just hit sound now, and then boop, and then we can call it whatever we want. We could call it rad sound, well, let's just say rads. And then you can, do your tags if you want. You call it a loop, call it a favorite, call it my new sound. So the last added functionality in the 1.3 update is honestly the coolest for me because it's really workflow related, but they added page loop functionality and they did it in a really interesting way. So let's take a loop at it. So you'll notice that if you go into grid recording mode, you can now see your pages down here. You can switch between them really quickly, and you can also use these little arrows if you so choose. Underneath them, however, you'll see these buttons are now green. So these are going to allow you to loop a page just like that, just by clicking on it. And so now what it's doing is just playing page 4 here, right? So this is pretty interesting in my opinion because you can double up which pages you're going to loop. So you could loop just, 4 and 1. You could, get rid of 1 or all of them. You could just unlock the page loop at any point in the sequence, right? So this is a huge workflow sort of hack, honestly. And I think it really opens up a bunch of different aspects of using the sequencer more like scenes. New day, more articulated thoughts on page looping. So what I'm trying to say here is that with the addition of page looping, we get an extra sort of performative filter that we have control over while we are composing or performing with the device. And what I mean by that is typically you've had, which pattern you're on, and then, obviously your mutes, your pattern mutes and global mutes, and then your fill state. And by combining, which pattern, so on and so forth, you can perform or write, music pretty adeptly with the elektron devices. That's what makes them so much fun. A real quick note about the fill, they seem to have changed its behavior, so now it kind of latches on, you'll see, and you have to quick click it off. I don't like that. I like the momentary thing. I don't know, there's no option to change it back at the moment, so don't like that. Anyways, here's an idea about how we can use page looping kind of like scenes, right? So let's engage page looping on page 4. and we've got, you know, just this little hi-hat going here, right? We can bring in our snare and maybe our bass line, right? And this is all we're really gonna use for the time being. So let's go see what is on, you know, page 2 here by just clicking it off, right? So it's this kind of snare fill type thing. What's over here? It's this muted kick drum and ride snare, right? And then what's over here? It's the full, you know, thing with a fill, right? So that's interesting, right? We've got these 4 distinct scenes. And what I think is really cool is that you could use this as a performative aspect, you know, in conjunction with your mutes, or you could compose music this way. So, you know, if you've got it locked in on page 4 here, you are still able to go to page 2 and change what's happening on that page and then pop back over into it. Something that I'm just now putting together is that it'll jump to the page that you're locking in as you lock it in, and it will also let you jump out of it at the same time. So watch this. As I only lock channel 1, you're gonna watch the pattern kind of scrub through, and we can very quickly jump to pattern 3 by unlocking from 1 while it's on 3, and then, you know, pop, and then popping back into 1. That kind of sounds weird here. Let's just see how it works in practice. So we'll start with 1, right? And then we'll wait for it to get to 3. And then we can very quickly see we just got the last little bit of that pattern, and then we hopped back in to 1. So that was kind of cool. I bet we could do it pretty much anywhere. So that's just like a momentary bit of 2. So this opens up even more possibilities. This is really cool. This is super duper fun. Something that I did notice is that if you have a pattern like I have on 10 here where it's just 3 steps, you can still do like looping on other pages, but it just won't display those pages. This I think would be a perfect example of a place where we could use more lights, we could use more contextual menus on the Digitakt. I will also give props though that I noticed if you have micro timing or retrigs, it will also show those on the parameter locking too. So that's just an extra cool little thing that I just noticed here, you know. Different camera, and now we're thinking about this OS, we're talking about it. So I wanna just say that I feel like you can be proud of Elektron and not think they are the literal Virgin Mary. And I think you can also be disappointed in Elektron and not think that they are literally Satan. And I really land somewhere in the middle here, especially with this OS, because this is just recycled stuff from the Rhythm. And while I'm grateful for new features and things of that nature, it's been about 2 years since we've heard anything Syntakt related. There was actually a small update pushed out, I believe earlier this year, that was in regards to a change in production. My thoughts on this OS are complicated because on one hand, I'm very happy for continued support. I'm very proud of Elektron for doing something cool, and I think the things that they gave us are pretty nifty. But on the other hand, I feel like there are aspects like the digital side of this machine that is completely being ignored. Like, I feel like there should be more sort of machine drum style devices on here. I feel like there should be more input machines, or any type of input machine. I feel like there should be more utility machines in the digital realm. It's just so bizarre. And then another part of me is starting to feel like some of the limitations that, you know, the Syntakt, the Digitakt 1, Digitone, like some of these things where like not having a compressor, you know, the chorus, it's starting to feel like these limitations are really just imposed by Elektron so that they have like a nicer product spread than they are like actual limitations of the device. I am quite certain that the Syntakt could handle some sort of rudimentary monophonic sampling, and I am positive that it wouldn't cut into any sort of digitact sales if it was like the machine drum, where you could sample like 6 seconds of audio and that was it. Like, why can't we get like something like that? Like, I don't need time stretching. I don't need like any, like, just give me like basic tiny samples. You could even make it so I have to put them on over the damn turbo MIDI machine. I'd be happy about that. I will also say that I'm really proud of Elektron for using the devices more efficiently, like seeing the pattern loop mode, like, you know, that contextual menu when holding the page button down. That's really nifty. I want to see more stuff like that. Like, if you've ever used the circuit tracks or rhythm, you know that machine has no screens, but once you learn what the pads are communicating to you, it's really easy to navigate and it's really fun. I want to see more of that type of thing in the Elektron boxes, you know? I mean, half the lights in this machine light up 6 different colors, so I think we could definitely get some more sort of contextual, color-based approaches, especially to shortcuts and things of that nature. I'd just love to see more of that. Okay, and honestly, that's gonna do it for me. If you have watched this whole thing, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody in my Discord. Thank you to my wonderful partner. Thank you. I gotta go play with the pulse width. Thank you to all the folks out in Southern California. Thank you to the ferrets. Thank you to the Elektronauts mods. Like, subscribe. I really am going to make a concerted effort in 2025 to be posting some more videos and doing more fun, cool stuff. So we'll see more of that soon. Again, I really appreciate y'all and have a nice time. Also, Elektron, I'm gonna, like, look at me here. Make this list alphabetical. Having it in chronological order, stupid. Drives me crazy. Every time I go through the machines list, it drives me crazy. Just put it in alphabetical order. Real quick, I'm just gonna put one little comment in here. I really don't like that the machines are not alphabetically ordered. It just kind of bothers me that they're like chronologically put in there, but whatever, let's move on.